Good evening. Welcome to the June HRC meeting. We'll begin with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Bombach, Commissioner Kralik,
Present.
Commissioner Lee,
Present.
Vice Chair Onan,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Chair Stinger,
Here.
Commissioner Sway.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. This is just for our new commissioners, this is the standard format that we use. We go through roll call and then any requests for agenda changes, deletions. Are there any changes?
No, because Philippe made it. There's no changes on staff's part.
Thank you. And then we open it up to oral communications from the public, and we have none. And that would be an opportunity for somebody to address us on something that is not on the agenda. And we have no communication cards, so we'll roll through that and go to the business section of our agenda. And the first part is greetings. I feel like the first day of school. I'm so excited. New things are always exciting, and this is, half our commission is new. So we have a lot to be thankful for. I appreciate each of you stepping up. And I'd like to give you a chance to just introduce yourself, maybe some experience you bring, hopes you bring.
I'm a welder from Cleveland, Ohio, and I grew up in a big family, and I think that's part of my upbringing is to treat people fairly in life, and I've carried that forward with me throughout my career. I've been working as a mediator and a court hearing officer in the mental health field, and I've been doing that with the County of Santa Clara and also the Superior Court of California. I'm happy to be here and happy to contribute anything I can to the Human Relations Commission in Palo Alto. I have 2 young children, 10 and 7. And I am anxious to give good example and participate in my home community. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the commission.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, so I'm super excited to have a fellow Buckeye on our commission.
Okay, my name is Qifeng Xue. I grew up in China, so as you guys can hear from my accent, I have a very strong accent. You know, what I said during my interview, I was raised in a very, very small village. So the population is about 400 people. You know, I'm very proud to be here. Like I mentioned earlier during the interview, this is a technical center. I am very proud to be part of it. I also have, the main reason I moved to Palo Alto because of school. I have 2 kids. One now is in college, one's in high school.
Make sure you're speaking to the
sorry. Hopefully, by joining this committee, I can share some of the experience dealing with the young people. So hopefully we can share what we can learn, how to help them out. I have been working for over 20 years with the biotech industry. So what I can bring here maybe, from technical side, analytical. So analytical skill, that's what I have been doing to support the drug discovery and the development. Yeah. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
My name is Columbus Smith. I am a recent transplant from New York. I moved here 5 years ago to pastor the oldest African-American church in our community, the University AME Zion Church. I've been blessed to work with this committee on several initiatives over the past 3 years. And because of that work, I felt like this was worth the time investing in because they are truly at the spare tip point of the issues the community needs to discuss. So thank you.
I'm ready for a great ride. We're going to have a great year, great 3 years. We'll move on to our His Rep Learning Forum. We have, again, for the new commissioners, we have in the past done different learning series on different topics. that help us stay in touch with the community or help us research something, become more familiar with a topic we're interested in. And the series that we're looking at right now is to find out, talk to our HISRAP grantees, particularly about new initiatives that they're taking on. We wanted to,
Can you describe his rap a little bit for the newcomers?
fair enough, I think we should. It's the human services resource allocation process that we go through rigorously every 2 years and review in the mid-cycle. And the purpose of it is to distribute city funding for nonprofit agencies. We have a list of objectives that you'll see, and we try to work towards those goals and distribute funding as broadly as we can. It's one of the most exciting and most frustrating processes that we go through. And it's one of the things that we put a lot of diligence into, and have a responsibility to the council to do it as well as we can. One of our grantees, the city's grantees, has been adolescent counseling services, particularly the Outlet program. And we've invited Dr. Ray to speak to us today.
Well, thank you all for having me. And first of all, I'd like to thank the HRC for over 30 years of support of adolescent counseling services. And for all of you who might be new and don't know, I'll give you a little bit of history. This group actually founded adolescent counseling services back in 1975. So it stemmed, the organization stemmed out of the HRC and then City Council. Basically what happened at the time, back in the 1970s, is there was a lot going on with teens and there were no resources in Palo Alto. And then the big moment that happened is that the son of the mayor committed suicide. So the HRC and City Council decided to start a nonprofit organization. We were not known as, I think we were known as Palo Alto Adolescent Child Consortium back then, and then we changed our name. So the reason why I'm here, the reason why ACS is here is because of you and your predecessors. So thank you so much for years of support. So currently, the City of Palo Alto, through his rep, is helping us fund our work with both high schools here, so Pali and Gunn. So we provide support services to the LGBTQ youth of those high school. And I'll share a little bit more of those with you later, plus what we plan on doing in the future with our brand new strategic plan that was voted by our board last month. Just to give you a little bit of background, it's always nice to not be the only one with an accent here. So it's, not to be the only foreigner and the one that sounds different. So welcome. It's glad to be part of bigger tribe. So in terms of adolescent counseling services, I'm also, to give you an overview of who the agency is, and then we can talk more about the specifics. So I'm celebrating 20 years of services with the organization. And basically, there have been many offers, but I was only able to say yes to one, which is ACS. And the reason why I love adolescent counseling services so much is because it's the only organization of its kind on the peninsula that only focuses on adolescent and young adults. So our age range is between 10 to 25. We used to be 12 to 18, and then we've realized, working with our community and population, that the transitional age youth is so important, that to drop somebody at the age of 18 from all resources and transfer them and refer them out to another organization can be detrimental. So we decided to extend our age from 10 to 25. So I know all of you may go back in a place in history and remember your adolescence, which was supposed to be a time of fun and carefree and just being crazy, but I know that it's not the case, and all of you can absolutely easily, back in your memory, go to a place where it was wasn't that fun. It was a struggle to be a teen. So I'd like to invite you to go back there. And it's getting worse for teens. I mean, especially in Silicon Valley, because of the pressure, academic pressure, the pressure to succeed, the wealth, the divider, and all that. But in my case, just to give you a little bit of history, and some of you have heard that before, but I grew up again far away from here in French-speaking Switzerland. And when I was a young boy, my sister started developing a substance abuse problem. And basically, I watched my family being destroyed, not by my sister's substance abuse. It was destroyed because of the silence, the denial, the stigma, the fear of talking about it. So I watched basically my parents deal with it in silence. I know there was a lot of self-blame. There was a lot of blaming each other, a lot of anger, a lot of uncertainty, but this idea that we were the perfect family, and to go out to even talk about it would just shatter that image. So that's what destroyed our family. So growing up, we had this code of silence in my home. So at age 12, when I started questioning my sexuality, I knew that home was not the place where I could say, "Hey, Mom, Dad, I think I'm gay," at a dinner table. So basically what ended up happening is I stuffed all those feelings. I denied myself my own development, my own identity, and became isolated, very lonely, depressed, thought about suicide many times. And thus, if you take all my history, my upbringing and all that, this is the reason why I dedicated my entire life to adolescent counseling services, and plan to do even more, because it's an amazing organization and I love leading it. And the ultimate goal is I don't want any youth in the communities that we serve to go through what I went through, because I don't think there's nothing worse than not knowing who to talk to, not having any resources. So that's what we provide as an organization. I've been providing since 1975. To give you an idea of who we are and what we do as an organization, so we have 4 programs. We have adolescent substance abuse treatment program, which is the only what we call IOP program. By IOP, we mean intensive outpatient program. That means for substance abuse treatment, it's the last stage before hospitalization. So the kids and the families are with us 4 to 5 evenings a week in our offices. So that's one of the program, and we offer that program down here in Palo Alto. We have offices on Grant Avenue, as well as in Redwood City, our headquarters. And then we have what we call our school services on-campus counseling program. Right now we are at 4 sites, so we provide services mostly in San Mateo County. So we're in East Palo Alto, Woodside High School, La Entrada Middle School, as well as Oxford Siena Youth Center in Redwood City. So those programs, our services are free to the kids. They can just come to us and walk into offices. We have licensed people as well as interns, postdoc and postmasters working for us. Then we have our general counseling office that we call the community counseling program. So those offices are in Mountain View, Palo Alto as well, again in Grant Avenue, Redwood City, East Palo Alto, Woodside, and also in San Mateo. And that's what you expect a clinic to be, outpatient clinic. So kids and family members can come to us, and we have offices, and we offer sliding scales. So we go as low as $5 a session, but we've gone even lower, 50 cents if that's what the kids can afford. And then our last program, which has been in existence since 1995, not with us, but we acquired the outlet program about 4 years ago, and that's the program that provides support to the LGBTQ youth in both San Mateo and Santa Clara County. What's changed since we adopted the program, it used to be only a support program where we'd have support groups and all that, and then we've realized that a lot of the youth coming to us were also dealing with drug use and alcohol and depression and anxiety. So we decided to turn our outlet program into a clinical program too, where we actually have professionals in the field of psychotherapy that can address specific issues that that community deals with. So that's something that's new. So it's not only just a support program; it's a clinical program. So just to give you an idea, at both Pali and Gun for this fiscal year, we saw 679 youth that were asking for services. So, go ahead.
Earlier, you said you had a strategic plan, but you never went back to that.
I'm going to it. Yeah. So we did with the HISRUP contract right now. So we served this fiscal year, starting in July, 679 individuals from Palo Alto at both of those high schools. Part of what we do too with the outlet program is educate the communities that we serve. So both counties. It's really important that the more people know, the more comfortable they are with the LGBTQ experience. So through education, so we go through all school districts that will invite us. We go to corporations, we go to city councils, we go to anywhere, government. We reach over 6,000 individuals each year, and we have quite a curriculum and a specific program to train, to teach communities. Basically, our goal is to make our communities safer for our LGBTQ youth, and basically safer for every youth. So, what's always amazing, and this goes to our strategic plan, is in the Bay Area, in Palo Alto, anywhere here, because of everything that's going on with the community, we think that this is a really safe community, that it's it's very modern and supportive. It is not. So from all the teens, and this is just local research as well as what we hear from our youth, so locally 61% of LGBTQ identifying youth report feeling unsafe at school, and all of you have heard reports of bullying. There were even fights and kids being harassed and assaulted in bathrooms at Gun High School. I think that was the last time it happened. And this is compared to other peers. And this is the thing that's really sad, and we see a lot of that, is 40% of LGBTQ youth live in a hostile home environment. We still see kids here from Palo Alto who are being kicked out of their home because they come out to their parents. And this is not just transgender, it's the entire LGBTQ experience. So this is still happening. So as you know, there is a huge need to support the experience of our LGBTQ youth. If you go back, I'll just give you an example of when we had the suicide cluster at Gun, the CDC did a research, and then a report was generated. And part of the report, one of the pillar was sexual and gender identity was part of what could be possibly causing some of the distress. And as you know, LGBTQ youth have 4 to 5 times more likely to commit suicide, to choose suicide as an option than straight identified kids. So in terms of our strategic plan, we as I said, we were created in Palo Alto. We love this community. We've been providing services here. So we want to have a larger presence here. So one pillar of our strategic plan is starting in August of this year, we are opening what we call the Adolescent Counseling Services Institute for Psychotherapy and Training. And basically that's a brand new project. So because we realized that we have niche programs, so the substance abuse treatment program, no one else does what we do in terms of the psychotherapy of that, the support of that. Then the outlet program, doing the clinical work, no one else does that. So we decided to become the leader in training future psychotherapists as well as current providers in how to support, how to treat, how to be with the LGBTQ community. So we'll be training up to 25 interns starting in August that will become the leader professional in working with the LGBTQ youth, especially with the transgender. There's nothing out there yet. A lot of people don't really know what to do with the experience. So we have been able to gather some professionals who have done research that will be part of our clinical supervisor, teachers. The other aspect that will be really important for us, because we've been doing family therapy for many years, that's part of who we are, is also to support the families of the LGBTQ youth as they're exploring and developing into the beings that they want to be. And again, no one does that out there. So that's one aspect where we would like to get more involved with the community. The other part is because we want to have a bigger presence with Palo Alto, especially with the LGBTQ youth, is the office in Grant that we have. We have 5 counseling offices. Our goal with the next HISRAP cycle would be to request from the city of Palo Alto to be able to man that office with a full-time expert in supporting the LGBTQ youth experience and the families. So that individual would not only be doing clinical work with the youth and the families coming in, that individual would also be a liaison with the school, with city council, with the government, with the press, in terms of being the leader in what is going on in research and distributing all this. So again, the goal is to make the Palo Alto community safer for our LGBTQ youth and family members, as well as any other families. So that's some of the ideas that are coming. But again, our goal is to increase our presence here, and because we know they're here. I mean, the kids are here. It's just to have a bigger outlet and a bigger place for them to be able to find resources, and specifically with the clinical work. I mean, there are some places where they can get the social aspect, but we know that it's not enough. There needs to be a clinical aspect, especially when they're dealing with substance abuse issues or depression, anxiety. So ACS would like to be there for those youth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The history is exciting, and and going forward, the initiatives are dramatically exciting. I'd like to open the floor up to comments and questions from the commissioners.
Sure.
Raylan?
Just want to say thank you very much for sharing your personal story. I think that always helps to understand the motivation behind your work, and thank you for your 20 years of service on the front lines. And I wondered if you interact with hospitals, El Camino, Stanford, some of the other local hospitals, in counseling youth that may be hospitalized for issues related to mental health, and how you are able to serve as an outpatient provider for them.
Oh, absolutely. One key that has been the key to the success of adolescent counseling services has always been our collaboration. For example, we work really closely with Children's Health Council, because they have an IOP, but for the mental wellness aspect. So when we have kids who no longer benefit from the quality of therapy that we provide, and they need more, then we would refer them to work with CHC. With Stanford, of course, you've all heard about the Headspace project. So that is something that we are with Dr. Adelsheim. They've approached us. We've been really interested, and we would like to, once the whole project comes to fruition, to be the provider in terms of the substance abuse treatment program for the youth, as well as the LGBT support.
We all know about Headspace.
Oh, so
I have it on my phone.
yeah. It's. Let me try to bring it all in, because it's a huge story. It's really exciting, actually. So it stemmed about 2-3 years ago. And again, it's out of a tragedy. There was a young girl who committed suicide by jumping over 280, the overpass. The parents, the mother especially, got so with grief, she came back and saying, we need to do something. You know, this was at the same time that the clusters were happening at Guns. So she traveled to Australia and discovered that the Australian government provides what is known as Headspace. And Headspace are centers that are free to any youth, and they can get their physical health, emotional health, there's social groups, it's a hub for youth regardless of what's going on. So they thought this was the coolest thing. They came back, they started talking to people in the community. I got involved with the conversation, and then Dr. Adelsheim, who is a psychiatrist and a researcher at Stanford, got really excited about it and approached a lot of community members and said, we need to open that up in Santa Clara County. So basically, that was the beginning of the conversation. Now we're close to almost opening it up. The Headspace, we're going to change the name, so we're not competing with the project in Australia, but the County of Santa Clara has pumped a lot of funds in. So the idea is to open up in the northern part of Santa Clara County as well as in the southern part, and they're looking for real estate, and as I said, then ACS and other community-based organization would do some of the providing services there. So we're really excited about that, doing that. So yeah, the relationship in both counties. That's we have to do that. And again, our ultimate goal is what we call the warm handoff, which means less trauma, less stress for a kid that needs to be handed off to another provider. We're trying to do that really gently and professionally.
Thanks.
Dr. Ray, thank you so much for the phenomenal work you do in the community. The one thing that I'm struggling with a little bit is you deal with marginalized populations, which 100% need to be dealt with. But according to research by Cigna at the beginning of the month, Gen Z, which is 18 to 22, is the loneliest generation currently recorded. How are we getting the information of your great services to that larger group? Where I didn't hear that in the plan, and it seems like that would be super beneficial in this space to get that general population also engaged in this, because I know from my own personal counseling experience at the church or with people, there is the silent majority, about 60% of people that at some point deal with these issues. How do we get these kids engaged with you? Where is that in the plan?
What's been amazing, and we've seen that trend change over the years, and that particular population, what they're doing that's out of this world, keeps me up at night with excitement, is the first time that we actually see word of mouth amongst kids, where we have kids actually contacting us or bringing their friends to us and say, she doesn't want to be here, but I think do you need to talk to her? And then the other thing too is that there are, because of I would say the lack of I'm trying to find a word that's not going to be, crazy word, but there's something with that generation where they're no longer, the shame and the stigma is a little different at all levels, from sexual and gender fluidity to how they feel, that they're now engaging their parents to also make that step. So we're seeing a decrease a little bit in the denial, a decrease in the stigma. I also think that we as a community, especially since the last two clusters, have done amazing at educating and making people aware of services. I don't think it was the case when I first started 20 years ago. And again, I started with a cluster at Palo 20 years ago, and it was completely different. It was a shutdown of the community, no talking, let's not talk about suicide. And I think this community has done amazing to allow kids the freedom to approach, to know of services. But I would say our best marketers are the teens themselves.
Philippe, I was wondering, you gave us some very disturbing statistics about kids feeling unsafe and growing up in hostile home environments. Can you tell us a little bit more about how those statistics were derived?
So these are directly from the Healthy Kids Survey for both San Mateo and Santa Clara County. That's where they were. And then they reflect what we hear from our kids, from our youth. And as I said, the homeless population right now, especially with the LGBTQ identified kids, is humongous. And we're getting a lot of youth coming down from San Francisco because they're limited resources as well, and we see them even locally, so local communities.
I also want to thank you for taking the time and presenting such rich material. I also wanted to follow up on the statistics that you reported to us, shared with us. You know, I think we've talked about this, that we're doing an assessment of the LGBTQ plus youth and families and adults in our community. And I wondered if some of this data would be, if we could work with you to break out Palo Alto specifically.
Absolutely.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, and actually I could work with our clinical director as well as our grant writer and just break those down, because we have quite amazing data, just locally, countywide as well as state, that we always utilize. And even for the HISRAP, I mean, for those of you who haven't gone through an HISRAP application process, yeah, well, you should, because it might change your view on what you make us do. I'm not complaining, but it's I wrote it. I thought I only wrote one doctoral dissertation in my life. I'm writing one every other year for the HISRAP.
It's less than most
Yes,
federal grants.
yes, and it's gotten better thanks to Minka and her staff, so advocating for us. But we could maybe share some of the data and the reason behind why we provide the services with all of you too, because we, as I said, we draw from local and from county and state data.
I'd really appreciate that. Thank you. I also wanted to ask you if you could follow up on the comment that there is adequate access to social facilities, socialization.
Yeah, I think the LGBTQ experience has initiated responses from providers. It's a community that I believe that's becoming more vocal, and a lot of organizations, counties are starting to react. So for example, in San Mateo County, for the first time in history, they realized that there was a need, so they opened up the Pride Center in San Mateo, and we're a part of that. We're providing the youth services. Then now Santa Clara County has the LGBTQ affairs that just started maybe a year ago with Mary Bell, and then Anthony Ross, who was one of my staff, still a friend. So there is those responses, and our other organizations are opening up some of their offices for social, after school. All the schools have what we call the GSAs, depending where you are, the Gay Straight Alliances. So there is that social aspect that's happening where somebody may feel safe to go to a place and it's being offered. Where we are the leader in starting a brand new movement is the clinical aspect. It's not there yet. So ACS is the first one that's actually tackling into doing research, looking at supporting the clinical growth of the LGBTQ youth issues, especially when it comes to combining with substance abuse, depression, suicidality, and all that. But I think there's one. So we have our offices down here, but then the Family and Children Services also has a youth center. It's a safe space for them to go. They have one here in Palo Alto as well as in San Jose. So we work with them again and combine our services. So if they have a child who identifies as needing more services, clinical services, then they will refer to us for the work.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Wei, for everything that you and ACS is doing for all LGBTQ youth in this community. The Commission's having its retreat this coming Saturday, and so I would be very interested in your unique perspective as to, what are some of the unmet needs in the Palo Alto community, how can the city, how can the commission better support LGBTQ youth in Palo Alto? In addition to supporting ACS and everything ACS is doing, what are ways that the city can fill in the gaps, things that ACS maybe doesn't have the bandwidth or expertise to do? What can we be doing either jointly with the school district or independent of the school district to fill in those unmet needs?
Well, I think it's so I'm basing my response from experience and what I hear from the youth and what I've observed. I think, and this is part of our mission now is breaking the stigma. I think you've heard my story, talking about my sister, my family, and all that, and I know that all of us are directly or indirectly affected by mental wellness and substance use and all that. And I think as a community, we need to break the stigma. I think the more of us come out there, the more of us can share our stories. I mean, if we could have a campaign of successful people, or not even successful, just the fact that we're all sharing the human pain of growing up in families or having family members, of having friends that are dealing with it, because this idea of perfection, of wealth, of success, I think is killing some of our kids here. So what I would recommend is as a city, if one day there could be this huge, I'll call it coming out or share our stories of who we are, and that it's totally okay. I mean, it's totally okay to suffer from depression. Somebody will hear you and say, "Oh, they made it," So that's my utopic answer. But like I said, sometimes I feel like especially in this community, we're so guarded in terms of I'm perfect, I have no problem, my car's shiny and everything's fine, and it's not.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Have you seen a more heightened sensitivity around mental health, given the current environment with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain affecting the parents' generation of kids now? Have you seen more cases coming in because of that?
Not really, sadly again, because I think that it's so easy to differentiate yourself from those cases because they were adults or they had everything, and not my child syndrome, not our family syndrome. So we thought we would see more, but what we're hearing is a bit more of a conversations. So we'll have parents calling us and what do I do with this conversation? My kids are asking questions, but we haven't seen an increase in referrals or phone calls for direct services.
So, Felipe, I wanted to ask, in Palo Alto, the demographics of our community have shifted over the last maybe 10, 15 years. And sometimes we're hearing that kids who come from more traditional homes or whose parents maybe have immigrated from another country are having a difficult experience, especially in the context of coming out as LGBTQ. So does your program outlet deal with that situation? And do you have any suggestions, ideas, or input for us as a commission on how we can reach out to various communities within Palo Alto to help educate and inform them?
That's a great question. So what we as you may know, for any youth, any individuals to open up and feel safe, having a person that looks like you, that sounds like you, that has gone through similar experiences is really important. Where we in the world nonprofit, I think, suffer with that is we try to recruit individuals from the communities that we serve, so then it reflects the community that we support. Yet the funding source for especially specialized sub-community group of professional is something that we cannot afford. So again, it's something that I think it's really important for communities such as Palo Alto that's so diverse to know that investing in the community-based organization in terms of funding, increasing the funding, especially when they're dealing with a specialized community, is really important. And just to give you an example, I mean we're talking. We can get a postdoctorate intern that's still going through their hours for a stipend of $3,000 a year, they'll do it. White dude. We go into special ed community, it's close to $40,000-$50,000 because that's what the county will pay. So those individuals are actually wanting a paid position.
When you say specialized communities, are you talking about ethnicity?
Ethnicity, yeah, ethnicity or LGBTQ, any type of community that doesn't fit the mainstream.
Is it possible that if you have somebody that's 1.5 gen from a different ethnicity, could they make the same connecting points? Especially as you deal with ethnic groups?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like kids are responding really well, better to somebody who's, with their history that looks like them, sounds like them, may have the same history, especially with the LGBTQ. Go ahead.
We've said LGBTQ a lot in this meeting. Can you define the percentages in Palo Alto a little bit more clearly for me? Because I don't know. So we've said it as a commission in here a lot. I just wanted to sort of know, what is the percentage?
So the percentage, I will use the number of the kids that have used that. So I'll say 700 youth have come to us with questions about, they may or may not identify as transgender and all that, but if you take the population of both Pali and Gun, which would be about, 4,000 total? So then that would be I would say that's the tip of the iceberg of the community. They say that nationwide it's about maybe 15 to 20%. The transgender experience is now we're seeing more and more. So as they're feeling freer to come out. So it's a significant. I mean, it's 10 to 15. I would say percent.
And you made a correlation earlier in your comments about they are more likely to commit suicide because of the issues. Have we made any correlation with our clusters and that being a factor?
Yes, there was one of the pillar that was identified. One was the Asian American experience background. One was the substance abuse, and then the LGBTQ was one of the pillar that came out.
What percentage of our population is Asian American?
In the community?
I think it's,
Yeah, as far as kids in the school.
Oh, in the schools. I know
Yes.
as a community, it's like 34, 35%. I don't have it on hand.
And it depends
high
which
schools.
school, yeah.
It depends which school. I think Gunn has a higher Asian population than Cali.
And yes.
But we can look that up for you and get that to you.
So as a strategic plan, ACS, wouldn't it behoove us to also spend some time looking at what it's like to be a first gen or 1.5 gen Asian in this time and space as one of the things we should look at?
Oh, absolutely. And we are. And I'm sorry I didn't mention that, but our goal is to increase our diversity and reflect the population that we serve, which is something that we already do. So for example, just to give you an example, so when we used to provide services at Gunn High School, our entire team of clinicians there were Asian American and bilingual, Cantonese and Mandarin.
So one of my colleagues who's not able to be here this evening has been particularly concerned about cyberbullying. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts as to how that's affecting the LGBT community here in Palo Alto, especially since we kind of live here in the heart of Silicon Valley, and if you had any thoughts on ways to address that.
Amazingly enough, it's not something that comes up with that particular community. We hear more of them feeling threatened physically on school campuses as well as on the streets, but it hasn't come up as a major point for us. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ray, for sharing your personal experience, also your dedicated support to our community. That's really wonderful. So when I heard, the Asian American population, the kid, you think that they have a higher percentage, chance to commit suicide. I can echo that. I run into a few situations. However, how can we deal with that? I have been puzzled. So my question is, when we have set up, ECS set up the office in Gong or Pali, how can we gain the, trust? The student have confidence talk to us. We knew we have a gap generation, so for example, you mentioned that generation 1 or 1.5. So how can we, basically attract those kids come to us, talk to us? Can you share something?
Well, yes, and I think it goes back to investing in the quality of the staff that's being offered position and hired. What we've realized is especially with the Asian American, there's 4 levels of connection. There's the 4th generation, so people who have been here, this is the 4th generation, they're fully Americans, and we need to deal with those youth completely different than the 1st generation or the families. And again, what we noticed, what came out to us quite strongly, especially at Gunn and at, what's the middle school that fills into Gunn? Terman, is again, the level of trust and proficiency of those therapists. So we basically had therapists from all those 4 levels that then could, and amazingly enough, the more, I don't want to say the resistance, but the more work had to be done with the parents and the families about educating what mental wellness is and the danger of it and so forth. So.
But I want to clarify, but for my new colleagues, but ACS is no longer providing those kinds of counseling services in the school. They have a new provider called Cassie. So ACS is providing outlet, which our commission recommends funding allocations for through the HISRAP process.
Yes.
So some of this is historical information,
Yes.
and some of this is current information.
You want to ask one last
Yeah,
comment?
I have 2 comments.
Two is good.
They never put, okay. The first comment is, I'm just as a 1.5 gen, the reality is that I had to teach my parents about stuff. My mom's a doctor, my dad's a banker. They just didn't grow up here. So they don't have the cultural touchstones. So as we talk about that particularly Asian population, because that's the fastest growing population in my community, in my church, the question is, how do we equip the students that are under trauma or duress to still be able to have the information to go into their homes, to speak with them? And I think that would be a line of equipping or a line of investigation to really look at. Number 2, this is a hot potato, but I'm going to say it anyway. Where are the community of faith, no matter the faith, whether it's Mormon, Christian, Jewish, wherever we are, how are they not engaged with you on any level? Or is that a misperception on my part?
I'll answer that question. So misperception. Again, we are part of Project Safety Net, which has people of faith component to it. Again, we will work really closely with congregation, church, synagogue, whoever the family is using as a support, to then do education with the congregation, with the community. But we use it more as a support. So when a kid comes in, first question that we ask is always about faith. Where do they stand and all that? And then if we see that as a supportive environment, then we will encourage the youth, the family, to reach out and to use that community as a support. Your first question, actually, we are starting a pilot project with the Foster City San Mateo School District, where we are, and this took about a year plus now to put in place, and we realized that what we are doing is training the teachers first to be able to then go into the classroom and teach the kids about diversity, differences, what's going on, mental wellness, and then we follow it up with conversation, questionnaires, tests, and then we go up to the parents. So this is basically we've been doing this with them. This is our third year. We tried everything from parent education classes to just the kids, and we realized that involving the teachers in their own education, their own comprehension, understanding of diversity, immigration, gender equality, and all this, then they have more of an impact to have the conversation with the kids, which then take it to their parents, and then we follow up with that conversation. So after this next year, we'll let you know if that's successful, because I feel like this is what is working on our pre-post test, when we see parents actually coming back saying, I totally finally get it after, yeah.
I'd like to use the prerogative of the chair to, one, close down the discussion, but first I have one last question. Thinking about the programs that you are initiating in Palo Alto as part of your new effort strategic plan, what do you think the greatest risk is, or what keeps you up at night?
Funding.
Funding.
Yeah, funding is the
I just
the
wanted
make
to
or
give you a
break it.
chance to say that.
Yeah. Funding is and especially given the current political economic climate, a lot of organizations are saying, a lot of people are clutching their purses. I mean, you don't know what the stock market may do, so people are. Same with foundation corporation, forget about it. I mean, even though they're making millions and millions, they're all tightening up. So that's a fear we have. Do they know something we don't? Or yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Philippe.
Yeah.
It's lovely to see you.
It's always a pleasure.
It's
See you in
always
2 years.
informative.
Yes.
Oh, we'll see you I'm sure we'll see you
Soon,
this
yes,
summer
yes,
as we
yes.
develop our programs.
And we do want to follow up with you on the statistics, Philippe.
Okay. I can find you. Yeah. Yeah. And if I can just add something, for those of you who are interested in knowing more, and Jill and Valerie can say more, we organize what we call Discover ACS Tour. It's a tour of our mission, and we do that every other week. So I could send Minka the information. You're welcome to join us. You see our offices. You hear from the kids, from the parents directly, and it's a wonderful experience. And
You ever come out to community organizations and talk about your work?
yes, yep.
Before we talk about
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Please, Councilmember Wolbach.
Sorry I was late. A couple things. Maybe staff can just do an email sharing of the contact information so that if anybody on the commission, including the one member who's not here today, have follow-up questions, they would be able to get in touch. Also, as a former gun student who, while I was at Gun and even at JLS, struggled with depression and bullying, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you do.
We'll be talking to you this summer, I'm sure.
Yes.
Bye, Philippe.
We'll move on to the next agenda item, a debrief on the Asian American community involvement, community film watching. Commissioner Lee.
Yeah, so we did a watch event for the PBS documentary, the Chinese Exclusion Act. It was the Tuesday right after Memorial Day, and luckily that didn't affect turnout. We had somewhere between 150 and 190 people in attendance. We had 100 members from the community and 30 people on the wait list, including I think maybe a former mayor was on the wait list, but we offered to let her in if she wanted to attend. And then the remainder was from Channing House itself. And they typically have pretty good attendance at their events, but they had indicated that this event in particular drew slightly larger crowd than usual. And so I thought it was very educational. I know generally speaking about the Chinese Exclusion Act, but there were things that I had learned from the documentary, and certainly our guest speaker gave some insight as to how this particular Immigration Act continues to influence immigration policy and what it means to be an American to this day. So that was very interesting insight. And just anecdotally, I've seen folks just be more aware that this had happened. I've seen people cite the Chinese Exclusion Act in some of their letters or public comments on various issues going on in the community. So anecdotally, it seems like people are slightly more aware that this has happened and continues to have implications today. So I thought it was a pretty easy event to put on. I'm glad that we were able to put it together in, about 2 weeks' notice. And we had something like 5 or 6 different Asian American or Chinese American community groups supporting it and sort of putting their stamp of approval on it. So it was a great way to educate the community for very little startup time or startup money. So hopefully we have an opportunity to leverage resources and groups like that in the future. And also Vice Chair Onan and also outgoing Vice Chair Chen were in attendance. So that's great.
And I wanted to just piggyback on my colleague's comments. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the event. I volunteered to help out, but there were so many volunteers already, I ended up just getting free dinner and not having to do anything, which was awesome. But I wanted to particularly share that Commissioner Lee worked very, very hard on the event. I mean, as he mentioned, there were far many more attendees than I think we had expected. So he worked very hard to ensure everything went absolutely smoothly with the handoffs between the founder of AACI, who gave an introductory speech. In fact, the speaker was his daughter, who is an immigration attorney. And then Commissioner Lee also spoke. Then there was the filming, and there was Q&A. So everything just went really, really smoothly. The setup was lovely. And Channing House did a fantastic job of making all of us visitors feel very, very welcome. And there were refreshments and so forth. So having attended many community events, I can't think of one that was organized better. And so I think we really owe a great deal of thanks to our colleague for ensuring that happened.
Is there a next step? Because if it sounds like there's a groundswell of desire to talk about topics, particularly around this community. Is there a next step that you think the commission could take?
Well, definitely. I think there is, definitely a need to engage with the Chinese American community, in particular those who may be more recent additions to the community, in particular immigrants, and just reaching out to them and helping them feel more welcome in our community and helping them understand some of the historical context and values of this community and how they may necessarily differ from what they were used to. So there are definitely things that I've been thinking of and others on the commission have been thinking about, and certainly you'll hear more about them at the retreat. And I know that the school district is particularly interested in seeing more action to engage with that community and are looking for opportunities to engage with the city and with our commission to work on that, on those issues.
I wanted to congratulate you thank you for the work that you did and congratulate you on the outcome. You know that I wanted to attend but couldn't. So I was curious if some of the questions were particularly educational, or if you could share what you heard.
I think they were very technical and very specific as to how current immigration law worked, and I think that was certainly not things I was prepared to answer, and maybe our speaker. I don't know. What was your impression?
Well, I think the people that I spoke to were, I think, shocked for one thing. They weren't aware of the Chinese Exclusion Act, or they weren't aware of the extent of it that had gone on for such a long time. And I think one particularly shocking moment in the film was the fact that one of the worst mass lynchings in U.S. history was actually not African Americans, it was Chinese Americans, and it happened in Los Angeles, not in the South. So there were a lot of things that came out. The racism in San Francisco was shocking. Dennis Kearney, for whom Kearney Street is named in San Francisco, was one of the leading politicians who tried to throw all Chinese out of this country and tried to bar their entry. And I thought a lot about our own quest to rename our schools here, and I'm wondering if we should knock on San Francisco's door and say, hey, maybe Kearney Street needs to go. But there's just a deeper history of racism here in the Bay Area and in other parts of California that I had ever been aware of. And I think it was eye-opening, too, because sometimes groups are very cognizant of their own victimization experience in terms of slavery, the Holocaust, and so forth. But when you open your mind and experience something new, and see another group's experience, I think then you can start to see these terrible patterns that we have, and the need for all of us to really stand together and fight against this kind of endemic racism and genderism that we have here in the U.S. So I found it very difficult to watch at times, but I also found it very eye-opening, and I think others in the audience shared my experience.
Commissioner Onan, Vice Chair Onan, thank you for sharing that. I was looking for a summary, something we could get our handle on, and that really helps make it more concrete. I don't see any other lights. I think that we'll come back to this on Saturday because you've started some activity on an issue that we care about very much, and we'll follow it through. And that will help me transition to a discussion of our retreat on Saturday. You've all gotten an agenda and some very simple prep materials. It's less than our email packet is for most meetings. So if you have any questions, then I'll be available tomorrow to answer them. We're doing a new process this year. We've worked with a consultant, and she's worked very diligently to put together an active program. We want to spend some time on process and a lot of time on issues of content that we will take forward into the new year. We went to the consultant because we wanted the retreat to be more rigorous in our outcomes and in our discussion. And I think we'll be able to achieve that. I think you can see that from the agenda. Some of our, the biggest outcome of the retreat should be, well, I guess there are two outcomes. One is working together, spending 6 hours together. I hope we'll come together as a working commission, transition tonight from a new commission to a smoothly oiled, well-functioning commission, and also be very objective and rigorous in our choice of programming for the coming year. I think the prep is basically a style exercise and some reading, so I don't think it should be too challenging. Any questions?
Maybe, Chair, perhaps you could let our new colleagues know where the retreat will take place and make sure that everyone's ordered their lunch and everything's kind of on board.
We will not name the commissioner that still needs to order the commissioner's lunch.
And are you all familiar with the new Middlefield Community Center, Mitchell Park Community Center?
Yeah, I've been there
Okay.
for the orientation, so.
Okay, so yeah. So
With
that,
young children, it's the playground that I'm most familiar
oh,
with.
gosh, yeah. See, if you're more of a South Palo Alto person, you know these things, but if I didn't know if you were North people, that.
It's a beautiful
It's beautiful,
facility.
and we've had other meetings there, and it's been lovely, so I
It
think
is
it'll
nice.
be, even though it's a long meeting, I think it'll be worthwhile.
There will be scones. For the new commissioners, that's a tradition from a former commissioner, a beloved commissioner.
Who passed away.
Who passed away, so we do it in honor of him.
And just to be clear, the meeting room is in the community center that's behind the library on Middlefield.
It's the corner room.
Right, but it's not Cubberley, where we did the orientation.
It's not Coverly and it's not in the library, it's in
No,
the
it's
community
behind the
center.
library,
Yep.
yeah. Okay. On to reports from commissioners. This is an opportunity to update us on activities that have given you some new information or insights or activities that you want to share with the rest of the commission.
So I have an update. So I served on the, independent of my role on the commission, I served on the scholarship committee for the inaugural Fred Yamamoto Scholarship. And so we awarded it this year to a extraordinary high school senior at Palo named Ricardo Lumbera. And we awarded him a $4,420 scholarship in recognition of the 442nd Infantry regimental combat team that Fred Yamamoto had served on. You probably read a little bit about him in the Palo Alto Online. We'll be doing a presentation at the next school board meeting on Tuesday to introduce him to the school board. He had a very interesting experience at Palo, which in many ways mirrored the story of Fred Yamamoto and the more recent experience that our community has faced in the aftermath of the school renaming debate. One of the things that he wanted to focus on was really educating his classmates about his culture as a Latino American in Palo Alto, and that involved trying to get the school to allow them to do sort of a I think it's like the Day of the Dead to honor relatives who had passed away, and part of that tradition involved putting up pictures of family members who had passed away. And even though it was a laudable goal, he came up against some interesting obstacles from folks in the administration who thought that sort of activity might trigger certain behaviors in light of all the suicides that have been happening in our school district. And so it was an interesting experience for him having to evaluate sort of the feedback he got from people in positions of power who were saying that you couldn't do this, and who were saying that it might trigger something. And so he after some self-reflection and questioning whether it was something that he wanted to push on, he realized that, no, this was something worth doing. It was the right thing to do. So he sought out to go and educate those administrators, change their mind on it, and they were able to make it happen. And so it was, in very much the same way that the school renaming issue has brought up many different issues. It was a situation where, you have people who come from different cultures with different viewpoints, and other members of the community saying that, in response that it may trigger something, and that forcing someone to really evaluate their own viewpoints, but at the end of the day, standing up and doing what is right, even in face of administrators saying that you shouldn't do it, or in face of creating division or controversy in the community. So we thought his story and his experience really reflected the spirit of Fred Yamamoto, and was very timely given sort of the issues that spawned the scholarship fund. So to date, we've raised over $15,000 through the GoFundMe campaign. So hopefully we'll be able to keep the scholarship going for couple more years at both Palo and Gunn next year. But if you or anyone you know is interested in donating still, you can do that through the GoFundMe campaign. And at that same meeting, the school board is going to be discussing a resolution in response to the school renaming debate. And part of that resolution is the school district setting up a committee very much similar to the HRC, to address those sorts of issues at the school district level. So if you're interested in engaging with that, I would encourage you to attend. I certainly will be in attendance.
Did you want to say anything about the LGBTQ survey?
Oh, sure. So as some of you know, and my new colleagues do not, earlier this year, Palo Alto conducted what we called an LGBTQ listening forum. So we invited people from around the community to just come and tell us what the needs of the LGBTQ community are and what things that we could potentially do to better support them. So we got a lot of interesting feedback at the listening forum, and we followed it up with an anonymous survey that we posted on the city website. So anyone who either identified as LGBTQ or who identified as a parent of an LGBTQ adult or minor child, or anyone who identified as a friend or ally of the community, or anyone who identified as other basically everyone could take this survey. And the survey went on from, I think it was April through June. And so we've just recently closed it and gotten the results. We're still working to kind of sift through everything that we learned, and I believe our summer intern is going to actually be analyzing the data for us. But out of that out of those results, both from the listening forum and from the survey, I think we'll be coming up with some recommendations that we as a commission may want to send on to City Council to talk to improve the city's ability to serve the LGBTQ community. So that'll be exciting, as I don't think the HRC has reached out specifically on this issue before, but in light of, political changes at the national level, I think it's important to show that we are a safe and welcoming community for the LGBTQ individuals.
Go ahead.
Are there any early recommendations?
I think we're not really at liberty to talk. It's a little bit early days, but we got some great suggestions from people's comments, both at the forum and in the surveys. I would say there's definitely a need to do more than just tolerate LGBTQ people. I think what they're saying is, it's nice that you don't beat us up and kill us as much anymore, but we really want to be proud of who we are, and we don't feel like that's kind of where this community is yet. And I think we have a farther way to go than we had realized.
I think one of the comments we heard was, it's great that you celebrate Pride Week or Pride Month, but we live here 12 months a year. And we'd like to extend some of our celebrations and activities beyond that last week in June. I just wanted to follow up and maybe also respond to your comment. We did hear one thing, which was about communication. And this Office of Human Services has funded a training program for recreation staff. Is that correct?
That took place last Thursday or Friday. Staff from the outlet came to train on awareness, sensitivity for LGBT issues or youth in our camp program. So that was on, I think, sexual identity and gender identity, just so that our staff was aware, and to make our camps a safe and welcoming place for all youth. That's in addition to other training that they get on a whole variety of issues.
But I wanted to call that out because something that we cared very much about, and I was glad we didn't have to wait for the recommendations, that we could have it happen for this summer's camp program. Mountain View also did a program, and they presented their results a couple weeks ago. And there's opportunities for Palo Alto and Mountain View to work with similar goals and objectives, and we'll be following that through, as Commissioner Onan commented, with the summer intern, and looking for a report out in the fall. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Welcoming America, a program to celebrate the immigrant experience in Palo Alto, and specifically this year looking at lessons that the more traditional community has learned from the different immigrant populations that have come into Palo Alto. It's a program that the Y does every year. They wanted to put more emphasis on it this year, and we'll be partnering with them to make a bigger statement about welcoming America. Planning committee has been established. We'll start meeting in, I think, a week and a half. But for now, if you could just hold September 22nd and 23rd, we'll be planning an event. Any other commissioner reports? Please.
So I have been active in the county in the Human Relations Commission for the past couple of years, and I also happen to be a long-term care ombudsman. And I wanted to just kind of fill in a couple of more recent attendances that I've had. One was a luncheon for the Bill Wilson Center, which is geared toward youth, and it's a very interesting luncheon because they brought up their new statistical analysis of homelessness, something they call couch surfing, that results a lot of times at high schools and at junior colleges. And they came up with a statistic, whether it's what you might call a rich private school or a public school, that's fairly consistent at 17% of kids that are moving around. And One of the areas that came up was one that was brought up by our speaker tonight, which is in the LGBTQ community, where there is this very high statistic of pressured households. Sometimes those youth go out and they stay with other people. And one of the things that Bill Wilson was trying to do is to sort of fund this research by having counselors who could, in fact, interact with this youth. I think in order to attack a problem like that, you have to do the surveys, and one step that might be done that we could bring back to this commission and perhaps on the retreat is, can our schools participate in their survey, their counting of youth that may be homeless for one reason or another, or could be couch surfing, whether it's the high schools, private schools even, in our community, because those folks, they do need some counseling understanding as to, the problems that they're dealing with. And in essence, a fairly high percentage had to do with households dealing with the LGBTQ experience. The second one that I attended was the Alzheimer's Association update, and this was held in South San Francisco. It's a wonderful annual update that talks about, solutions to this problem. And while there's been tremendous amounts of money spent on getting a solution to the problem, there isn't one. And a lot of their focus was on dealing with caregivers, folks that really needed help because of anxiety and depression, in addition to the folks that are dealing with Alzheimer's themselves. So caregivers are a big community that needs some support. And wonderful program that they had. They had researchers from Stanford, from UCSF, and while they understand the problem, in terms of its development over time, they really don't have a solution for it. And one of the things that is important to understand is that population of Alzheimer's patients, people with Alzheimer's, is increasing really dramatically. And I don't have all the facts and figures, but it is something to look into in terms of our community and understanding not only the folks with this disease, but also the caregivers. The expense, as you go to some of these homes, the expense of housing an Alzheimer's patient outside of the home is extraordinary. Can be up to $10,000 per month. Many people do not have that. And that's a tremendous burden. Their savings run out fairly quickly. Understanding how to get them care, access to resources that families can use to help them. And really, what's going to happen, I think, in the course of, the genesis of this disease is there's going to be a need to embrace that community, not to take it and move it away from our active community. Whether that's church-based or other ways, we're going to have to interact with folks.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you to, and ask each of the commissioners to think about communities that you want to serve and bring those ideas to the retreat on Saturday so we can set our objectives and particular projects for the coming year. Any council liaison, any update for us?
First, I'm sorry I was late to the start of the meeting, but I want to welcome 3 new members to the Human Relations Commission. Really glad to see new faces and enthusiastic participants. I'm looking forward to what this commission is going to produce, facilitate, and recommend to council over the course of the next year. A couple things I wanted to mention. First, this Sunday, Father's Day, as every year, just wanted to remind you, is World Music Day. It'll be right here on University Avenue, and it was founded by the Human Relations Commission. So I hope that any of you who are available for a part of the day, even on Sunday, will come. I don't remember the hours off the top of my head, but it's basically through at least the middle of the day. Also, I wanted to, I can't remember if I was here since the LGBTQ listening forum, but since it was mentioned and we were having a discussion earlier as well, I just want to emphasize how much I appreciated being able to attend and listen at that LGBTQ listening forum, which was co-hosted with the county, and I look forward to hearing the results of the survey combined with the comments that we heard at that event, and how the Human Relations Commission staff, in partnership with the county, can move forward that conversation. And I'm really looking forward to what kind of recommendations this commission will be making to the council to make sure that we are a safe and welcoming community for people who are, LGBTQ. And as part of that, ongoing mission of this commission and the ongoing component of what we're trying to do on council, rooted in and reinforced in that 2016 resolution that reinforced our values about being a diverse, welcoming, supportive, and protective community. Relating to that, last point I'll make is that on behalf of an overloaded city council and staff, I apologize that CEDAW, the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which was recommended by this commission earlier this year, has not yet come to council. It is not because we're not interested. It is because we are very overbooked. We had 2 council meetings this week and 2 next week, but staff knows that several of us on council are eager to see it. We will be taking that up in August. Do appreciate the work by this commission to come up with that recommendation and others, and hopefully more to come, because it really is just an ongoing effort by this commission and by the city as a whole to maintain our inclusiveness and diversity and protection of everybody despite any differences. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolbach, and I appreciate your comments. We are anxious to bring our recommendations to you, and we'll look forward to doing that in August. Staff liaison.
So I have a couple things. One thing that we weren't able to have due to our overloaded staff from the end of the year is Molly Stumper, city attorney, was going to come tonight to talk about roles, responsibility, jurisdiction, how to work successfully with the council. She will be coming in July. So that is something to look forward to. I wanted to, since Commissioner Kralik mentioned the Alzheimer's event, wanted to report on a successful project from the Age Friendly Community Committee, of which Commissioner Stinger, Chair Stinger, is a part of, along with myself and representatives from the Y, the Oshman family, JCC, Avenidas, and so forth. We had what we called an age-friendly awareness training for our frontline staff at city facilities, the JCC, the Y, and anybody from our grantee agencies. We had close to 70 staff members come. It was an amazing training from someone from the Alzheimer's Association, really well received from staff. It was taped, so we're able to send that out to staff who weren't able to attend or just to use in other settings as well. We hope to continue to work on aging awareness and creating a more age-friendly community with that committee. We did have an event from the Alzheimer's Association that was another well-attended event with over 100 people. And then I know Avenidas, sometime in the early fall, with support of the city, will be doing a caregiver conference. So I know caring for family members with Alzheimer's will definitely be part of that. So there's a lot of good things happening in that realm as well.
At this point, we'd like to make recommendations for the July agenda.
So we have 2 items. We have Molly Stump, and we have Kate Young from Palo Housing coming to speak about new innovations in their program as part of our listening series. So those are the two items. Mary, did you have anything else that you could remember?
I'd
Okay.
like to suggest we'll do a phase 2 of the retreat. We should, at the retreat, look at programs we want to carry forward. We'll set priorities for new programs, and I'll ask each of the commissioners to think about new programs they want to recommend. And we'll also look at our core responsibilities and divide up liaisonships across the commission, and we'll report that in July.
So are we not doing that at the Saturday retreat?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay.
I think,
Well,
well, no, go ahead, Chair, I'm sorry.
We thought this year that we would ask people to, which liaisonships they wanted to take and then distribute them offline.
Oh, okay.
And there was something else I wanted to say about that. Oh, so if you accept a committee assignment at the retreat, then come back in July with an outline of a work plan, so we can start actively pursuing our goals for the year. So we have 3 items.
And I wonder, should we ask our summer intern to attend and sort of give us an update on what he or she's working on?
We could. They will just be on board for 2 to 3 weeks, but they could come to be introduced.
Thank you. Okay, with that, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.